So I've created this video to try and give you a quick idea of how to use the XLIFF Manager plugin in STL Trados Studio 2019. The idea of the plugin is to allow you to convert your studio projects to a project full of XLIFF files as opposed to STL XLIFF files. The main difference being is that as XLIFF files, they're much less complicated and make less use of custom extensions, which are perfectly allowable as the ones that are used in STL XLIFF files. So there are two options. One is to be able to create an XLIFF file with the XLIFF 1.2 STL flavor, which is our own take on the vanilla flavor, and we've just tried to keep it as minimal and simple as possible. And the other option is a Google Polyglot version, which doesn't allow the use of the mark element. It's a much even further simplified version of XLIFF, and you can use whichever is most appropriate for you. So I hope this video is going to be useful and explain to you how to use that, and with that I'm going to make a start. So I've created a project in Studio called 602 Lazy Source Project. If I open that up, you can see I've got 3 files in there and going into 4 different target languages. So from English United Kingdom to Irish, Italian, Romanian and Russian Belarus. The files themselves have not been pre-translated, so there's nothing in there whatsoever. You can see we only have the source language text and we have nothing in the target. It's the same for all of the languages for all of the files. The content is just some nonsense about laziness. So what I can do, I'll start at the beginning, and first of all I will convert these into XLIFF files. So the way to do it, there are 2 ways in fact. First of all, you can right click and select Export to XLIFF, which just brings up a little wizard quite quickly, or you can right click Batch Tasks, or use the menu up here, Batch Tasks, and then select Export to XLIFF. Both of them do the same thing, but the difference between them is that the simple right click is probably a little bit quicker because it's just direct to get the XLIFF files out. The batch task allows you to attach this task onto the end of a sequence of tasks if you're using the professional version of Studio. This is quite useful because it means that you can create a project and have the files automatically converted to XLIFF at the end of the project preparation. So I'll use the batch tasks just so you can see it in its longest form. The actual tasks that it goes through are exactly the same. So I click on Next. I get the normal sort of wizard to show me all the files, and I can decide to not select some of them if I choose to do that. Click on Next. And this is the only set of options you'll get. These are options that you can set by default in the settings, which we'll take a look at shortly. But you have the ability to go to 2 flavors of XLIFF at the moment: XLIFF 1.2, the STL flavor, and XLIFF 1.2, the polyglot flavor. I'm going to go for XLIFF 1.2, and I'm going to create a lazy XLIFF. So I'm not going to include the translations, and I'm not going to copy the source to target for empty translations. So what this should give me is an XLIFF file without any segmentation and without any target language. And this would allow me to use one XLIFF file and send it out to everybody working with all the different languages, because I'm going to rely on the tools that are doing the translation to create the target for me. If I want to exclude some of the segments, I can do that. I can either, if I know what I want to exclude, I can just type it like that, for example, locked, and select it. Be careful hitting the return key to do that, because if you hit the return key, it'll activate the finish and it will set the task off before you're ready. So be careful with that one. I keep doing it. Click on the drop down and you can select the ones you want, so you can see the sort of things that are possible. So you can have as many as you like here, which is quite nice. So if you wanted to exclude also signed off approved, for example, you can just list them as many as you like. But I'm going to take all of the files, so I'm just going to click finish at this point. That will then run through and export the files to XLIFF. You'll find there's a little bit of a delay at the end of that, which is less noticeable when you do the batch tasks than it is when you use the right click method, and that's because the window stays there, you can see what's happening, but there's a little bit of delay before you can do anything else. You can see now my cursor's still going. The reason for the delay is because it's creating these reports. So in the reports view, you have access to, for each of the languages, the export to XLIFF. And if you've done this before, you'll also have import from XLIFF and things like that. So you'll have all the reports there, and that just gives you some simple statistics to explain to you what's been exported and what status it is. So it could be quite a useful report for somebody. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the XLIFF Manager now, and what we should see in the XLIFF Manager is that we have the additional project down here, Lazy XLIFF Source Project. Now notice that this has been added under my multifarious projects, and that's because this particular project has this multifarious as a customer. If you forgot to add your customer in your project, it will actually add it down here without any customer name. So if you wanted to tidy that up, you can go back into your project to add the customer, which, just to show you in case you didn't know, you would just go into your project settings in the project and select your customer here. And then what it would do, and in fact if I show you, if I just take none, I'll show you how this happens. Click OK, go back to the XLIFF Manager. If you refresh it, that will reload the project, and this time it should have no customer. So this is what you'd actually get. It would just be projects 1 and then the name. But I don't want that, so I'll put it back over to my project settings and make sure I group it with the customer that I want to use, which in this case is my multifarious. Come back here again and I can refresh the view. That refresh is very useful because without that you'd have to restart Studio for that to be recognized. The other thing the refresh can be useful for is that if you forgot a language in your projects view, you can go to your project settings even if you've already created the project, and under your languages you can add and go to your language pairs. Oops, sorry, language pairs here. You can add the additional language that you forgot. So if it was that one, you just add it like that. And when you do that and click OK, Studio will prepare the project for that one. And then you can go over to your XLIFF Manager, or after you've exported the files, go over to your XLIFF Manager and refresh the view, and it will then appear the additional language in here. So that's what the refresh button is for. The rest are fairly simple. This is the button to export the XLIFFs. This is the one to import the XLIFFs. You also have this on a right click, so I can right click, import files or export files. I can also open folder in Explorer, which will take me to the location of the project files for that particular language. There's also a language mappings. This is very important because many tools that you might work with, particularly XLIFF tools, won't use the same language code as Studio. And because we're using lazy XLIFFs, and we're going to allow the translating tool to populate the target language, if it doesn't use the same language as Studio, Studio won't know what to do with it. So Studio always uses fully qualified codes. So what I've actually done is, what did I call it? Oh, I forgot what I called it now. Let me just say flavor. So what you can see what I've done is I've mapped the flavors for Ruby, Russian, Belarus, Romanian and Gaelic, Irish Island Gaelic. And I've used the map codes that are used by MemoQ and Memsource to make sure that when I get the files back, Studio will know what to do with them. So this is a really nice feature because it means it increases the ability to allow another tool to finish off the segmentation rather than have Studio do it, which gives you that flexibility as a project manager and saves you having to deal with multiple XLIFF files when you could be just sending out one to every translator. If you segment it and they're pre-translated, then you're stuck. You can't do this. In those circumstances, you will obviously have to send out an XLIFF for each language. But if you're using this process, which we're using, you won't have to do that. So I click on OK. So that's the language mappings. In the settings, you've got some simple things here. You've got an export box where you can choose the default format. I tend to leave it here. If you include the translations, this is going to segment the file for you. If you don't want to include the translations, but you want to copy the source to target because you want them to be, you want it to be segmented, then you can do that. But I'm leaving all of that blank, so that's my default. You can also have by default any of the settings that you saw before of things that you want to leave excluded from the export. On the import, it's similar. you've got the ability to, if you're working with MemoQ all the time, then you would type MemoQ there, for example. And then that would be the origin system that's used on the import to tell Studio where the data has come from. And you can also set default assignments for the segments. So the updated segments can be translated, or the ones that are not updated you can leave as you can change to something else. I just leave them to don't change. Segments not imported, don't change. So you've got a lot of options there, and you can also decide to exclude certain segments based on similar sort of settings. So if you don't want to bring everything back in, you can do that as well. So it's a simple number of options, but they're quite powerful. So I'll cancel there. And what else can I show you? Other things to note, really quick things. Although we have the reports view down here on the left hand side, the application also has its own view report, and I love this because it's so fast. So I can click on view report, and this is going to immediately show you the same report, and it's instant, no hanging around, which is what you get on the reports view. And if you wanted to share this with somebody else, the cool thing here is you can actually select a text like that, and if you copy it and paste it, it pastes in a formatted way, which is quite nice. So you could put it into Excel. I'd have to say that's more by luck than judgment, and what we might do in the future is add some buttons here, but it's very nice that you can do that. It's a really nice job by Patrick, the developer, in getting this to work this way. So I can right click and I can export or import the same as I can up there, and I can also open a folder in Explorer. If I open the folder in Explorer here, this is going to open in the respective target language folder for the SDL XLIFF files. So this is not the exported files. The tasks down the bottom, however, will be the exported files. So if I right click on this one and open the folder in Explorer, in here I'm going to get taken to the folder where the export is. So you can see that an extra folder is added after you run the export called XLIFF.Manager, export, and then you will have a folder for each time you run the export. You can run it as many times as you like. It's saved by date timestamp, so you have the year, month, day, and then the time in hours, minutes and seconds. And the time is in UTC. It's always in UTC. So this means that no matter who you're working with, the folders they will be seeing and creating will match. So it avoids any ambiguity. So if you see the date timestamps and think that's wrong, it's not the same as the one that's on my computer, just double check, because it's probably UTC. So that's really quite handy. You can see from here, if I go over to my Turtle Commander, you can see here's my project folder, and you can see now I have this XLIFF Manager folder that's been added into my projects. If I double click that, I've got the export folder, and here's my first one with all the languages in there. You also have the HTML file and an XML file of the reports. So if you wanted to pick those up and use them for something else, you can do. But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the XLIFF files from just one of these folders, because you can see that I have for each one, I've got XLIFF files created in each folder, which would be very important if they were segmented. Seeing as they're not segmented, it's not so important, and all I actually need to do is to send these 3 XLIFF files out to every single translator in all 4 languages. I don't need to worry about the fact that it's only one file. And if I show you why, I open this up in my text editor and then pretty print it, you can see that at the top here I've got no target language. The target language up here relates to the original file. I've got no target language for the exported XLIFF file, and I also have no target language in the trans units. So there's my trans unit, and all I've got is the source and the segmented source, because I've used the XLIFF 1.2 SDL flavor. If I'd used the Google one or the Polyglot one, that would not have this seg source bit, because Polyglot doesn't use the mark elements. So that shows you what we've got, and because there's no target language, I can send this out to as many translators as I like. So now that we've done that, we can have a go at translating the files and then importing them back in again. I've already created a project here in Memsource, just ready for this operation. I'll just open my project, and I'm going to create a new job. And for that, I'm going to do the jobs into Romanian and into Russian. So I've already created the translation memories here, and everything is ready to go. So I just need to choose my files. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick, I can't pick all 3 files because I only have the free version of Memsource here, so I'm restricted to just 2. Otherwise I get a little error message, so I'll just take these first 2 here. And I'm picking the ones that are in the Irish folder. So these were created for the Irish language. And I'm deliberately using this just to show you how using the lazy XLIFF will work into any other language. So if I just make a note of where these are. So I don't think I can drag and drop here, not there anyway. And if I just paste that in and I'll pick the first 2 here, notice they're in my Gaelic Irish. I click on open. And I guess now I should be able to click on create. So that's created my files for me. So I should now, I think, be able to pick a file. So let's do the first one. We open this in the editor. It's been translated already, so I'll just confirm the segments. It's not confirmed. Maybe there's a setting in Memsource to have that already confirmed. I don't know. So I'm going to close that. That's the first one done. And I'll open the second one. Repeat the process. And close it. These are obviously machine translated, and I imagine it's quite amusing because it is translating a limerick where the English is a bit odd as well, so it's probably a fairly funny translation. Perhaps any of you Romanian and Russian speakers out there can tell me. So close that, and then we do the last one here. Like that. And close that. So that's all my files done, and now if I select them and download the original file, actually, oh no, sorry, that was my mistake. Download the completed file. That makes more sense. So completed, I open the zip, there's my files, so if I just copy them out of there, and I'll put them into my Memsource folder here. So if we just open one with a text editor just to see what we get, print it, and you can see we've got here in the file, we've got the source language, the target language is there, it's Romanian, which is correct. And I should have my target along with the mark elements is correct. So that's great. So this has done it, even though the original file was Irish, as you can see from here. It doesn't matter because the target language of the XLIFF that's important for me is in this file element, and it's correct. It does use the RO, it's not fully abbreviated, but that's because I chose just Romanian and not Romanian. So Memsource could have given me a fully qualified language if I'd chosen one, but I deliberately didn't for the purpose of this exercise. So that's just my Memsource done. So now let's do another one. Let's go and take a look at MemoQ. So here we go with MemoQ. I've also created a project ready here to make this a bit easier. So I've got my project ready. I've got a TM. I've got nothing in my translation, so I'll just come down here. I'll pick up all 3 of the same XLIFFs. So this time also from the Irish folder. This time I'm actually going into Irish. I drop them in there, which I think should pick them up correctly. Okay, so there's my files. I guess I can create a view with those and do them in one go. Call it my lazy view. Okay, then I can open them all up. Then I can go to preparation, pre-translate. Okay. Pre-translate my files. They're all confirmed. So I close that. I think I need to go back to the documents to do the export. So export dialog, and I want to put these files into my MemoQ folder. So there's the first one, second one, and the third one. Okay, I'm sure there's some way of stopping MemoQ from doing this. It's a bit irritating. It always has to find some file to open up at the end. If somebody can tell me how to do that, I'll gladly listen to the advice. So I'll close that, close MemoQ, and let's drop over to the MemoQ folder and see what we've got here. So I open this up, pretty print it, and we have, okay, we've got the target languages, just going to GA as we saw at the beginning, and I've got my target languages all done. Okay, so we should be good to go with the MemoQ as well. So the last one we need to do, I'm going to use Trados Live. So a quick preview the week before we're about to release, just to take a look at how I might be able to do this in Trados Live. So just like the others, I've prepared my project already. So I've got a project over here and my files. I've already got a file in there because I was playing around with this before, but if I come over to here and click on update files, I can update the files in my project by adding some more. So I'm going to take these 3 files here and drop them in and click on update. Now because I added translation memories for these, I don't really need to translate them. They're all going to be pre-translated. But if I flick over to my stages, I can see the files have been working through the different processes and they're ready for translation. So I could pick a file up, open it in the online editor. You can see they're already translated, already confirmed. I'm getting little matches and things over here in my translation memory window. So all the files will actually be like that. If I was to click on them all and take a quick look, I can see that they're all done. So what I will do is just click on all of my files, complete the tasks. And then if I go over to my files view, actually I could have completed them from there as well, and I take just the ones I needed, these ones here, and if I click on the drop down to download all translated files, actually because I didn't complete the other task totally, it might download a zip with them all in there, but no, it's not a problem. So we take these, here's my zip with the XLIFF files in them. If I just copy those out of the zip, and copy them in, if I just double check, so open it up in the text editor, pretty print and take a look. You can see I've got the target languages set, Italian, even though the original file was Irish, and they're fully segmented with everything there. So I'm good to go. Just in case anybody's watching this to see how to do this in Trados Live, I'll just give you one little tip that I noticed when I was doing this. In your resources, you can create different types of templates for file type configurations, for example. And I created one for my lazy projects. And the reason I did this is because on the XLIFF file for Trados Studio as well as for Trados Live, we have this option to add segmentation information to the translated file. And the default setting for this is to not have that checked, which for most users is right most of the time, which is why that's a default. But on this occasion, because I'm taking files from the XLIFF Manager that require that segmentation information to the file, I need to have this checked. So I actually created a custom file type when I prepared this to make sure that I was adding the segmentation information, because otherwise the file that I get back would probably be incorrect. I also asked it to overwrite the target language attribute values, although in this case that probably wasn't necessary because it wasn't segmented at all when I loaded it, but it would mean that I could use this file for something where I did include the target, where I did include the target language. I could actually overwrite it altogether with this option. Okay, so that's Trados Live. So the next thing we need to look at is how to import these files. So let's come back and just close some of these windows that I've been opening up while I've been working, the zip files. Let's come back over to Studio. So what I want to do now is import the files. So I can just right click, import files, or select the button to import files from the ribbon. I'm going to take the right click action, and all I need to do now is I can actually just drag and drop the XLIFF files that I want into here, and they should be picked up. So let's just put that to test. So I come over here. So we'll start off with let's take MemoQ first, seeing as they're at the top of the list. So we'll take those files and drop them in like that. These are the RS files, and you can see that they've been associated correctly to the RS files, which is perfect. And if I was to just finish at that, well, let's just go next. And in here, these are MemoQ, coming from MemoQ. So I'll just do the MemoQ first. This is going to update the origin system in Studio so that I know where the file has come from. So if I'm updating the TM, it keeps a good record of this sort of information. I'll leave all the other information as default. I could add some information here as we've looked at before, but I'm not excluding anything. I'm bringing everything in. So at this point, I'm just going to click Finish. That's been successful, so I can click on Close, and we should see against the RS files, these should change in a second. There we go, to update to show that the files have been imported. So that's changed to green. Now, one thing I don't think I showed you, so before I import the rest of the files, I'm just going to go back to my projects for a second, and I'm going to go back to the project here, and we'll open up one of these files. I'll open up a different one, actually, one that hasn't been imported. If I open a file to try to translate it and it's been exported already, the XLIFF Manager will give me a little warning that I have exported the files. Now, this doesn't mean that I can't work on this file. I could click on OK and I could continue to work on it. But it's important for me to know that I have exported them and they're being worked on somewhere else in case I make any changes in here. So if I do make some changes, it's a reminder, and if I do it, it's because I've deliberately done it and I know what I'm doing. Or I hope I know what I'm doing. So I'll click on OK, close the file, just go back to the XLIFF Manager. So we'll right click, import files, go back and open the Memsource folder. There's my Romanian and my Russian. I need 2 out of the 3 selected. Click on Next. This is coming from Memsource. We finish and close. And in a second, this should update the Memsource imported files. There we go. So that's now complete. And last but not least, we'll take the Trados Live, which is the Italian. It doesn't matter where I do this from. I can do this from here even, because it's going to recognize the location of the files from the ones I pick, because it's inside the file. So take those, drop them in. There we go. They're all picked up. And this comes from Trados Live, and that should complete this in a second. There's my files imported, so I can see immediately from this manager which files I've exported and which ones I've imported, and you can see that they've all been imported now and are complete, apart from this one and this one, which I just haven't done. So if I go back to my projects now, let's just double check. So we open up the Lazy project. Let's take the Romanian files, things are in here. And there we go. All translated apart from the last one, which has not been translated, so that's correct. So they'd be good to go. And if we pick, let's say, the Italian, these should be all translated, and indeed they are. So we're all good to go. So that seemed to work. And if I come back over to the XLIFF Manager and view an import report, what I can see, I just love how fast that is, but what I can see is that on the import, I've imported 12 segments, all translated in 65 words, 370 characters, 100% of the file, also the number of tokens. And the translation is not updated, is all 0 because everything was updated. So, all good to go. So that's a quick run through. Well, it wasn't so quick, I'm afraid, but hopefully you're still with me and you found this useful. But that should give you some idea of how you can make use of the XLIFF Manager to create your projects in Studio and offer them to other places. The reason I chose the Trados Live, there's a good reason for it, is because in this early implementation, if you've created projects with custom file types or plugins, rather, not custom file types, with plugins that came from the STL App Store, you won't be able to handle those in Trados Live just yet. But you could do it this way. You could create your projects in Studio, use the custom plugins from the App Store in your Studio project, and then convert them to XLIFF and drop them into the Trados Live environment to translate them there, if that's what you wanted to do. So it's just an example. I hope that was useful, and I hope you find the video interesting. I look forward to doing the next one.